Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I am your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest went into a realm with a horrifying experience. Today, ladies and gentlemen, joining me is near-death experiencer, Miss Mani Menendez. Mani, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No problem. No problem at all. And I want to thank you for coming on to share your account because let's just face it, many near-death experiencers with what we call distressing near-death experiences tend to not want to share and open up. So I thank you for that. But before we get into your near-death experience, why don't we walk backwards a little bit to get some context, religiously and spiritually speaking? What were some of the belief systems you held prior to your near-death experience?
I grew up in the Methodist church. I was an acolyte. I was in the choir, kind of like an old school faith belief system. And then I was just becoming evangelical, and I had just started going to a born-again church, but it had only been like a handful of times.
So would you describe yourself as moderately religious or extremely religious?
Well, I was naturally gifted as a child, spiritual wise, but at this time I was going through a dark time in my life. So although I was naturally gifted and that never changed, I definitely was struggling at this time, and I wasn't going as much, and I wasn't really living it like I used to before.
Now, when you say naturally gifted as a child, what exactly do you mean by that?
I had very strong intuition. I had I also had premonitions. Like, I knew before my grandfather was going to die, I got a vision of my grandmother crying, but I didn't really know what that meant. And I thought there was just a new baby born into the family, but I thought something happened to the baby, but it ended up being my grandfather. So I was gifted in that way, but nobody really understood. And also, as some background, my mother was the first person that had the SATs changed because she got a perfect score, and they called her down to the office and they asked her, how did you get all the right answers to the question? And she said the teacher would read the question and then say the answer, but the teacher was only reading the answers off the sheet in her head, but my mom was reading her mind, and so she got a perfect score on the quiz.
So this sounds like some level of precognition that you and your mother apparently had. Did any of this clash with your more conservative religious belief systems and the people who attended your church, should I say?
Right. That's what happened. At times I would go off on a tangent into things I was interested in as a young person, like angels. During a time I got into angels, but that was frowned upon in the evangelical community. So and aura reading and stuff like that came naturally to me, I had to shut down because it was typically, demonic and not right. So I was a very obedient child, and I was a rule follower. So I did shut those things down because I didn't want to scare my family, and also because nobody had any information to teach me about those things.
Yes, indeed. Many of the conservative movements and religiously speaking and Christian churches tend to frown down upon, ironically, things of spiritual nature. So with that said, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what triggered your near-death experience?
Okay, well, I had a very tough childhood, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was narcissistically abused by both parents. They were both narcissists, and my father was an alcoholic. And so there were painful things that went on that I didn't necessarily know was not right. I was just a little kid trusting and loving my parents and very innocent. And so I was just, I was always like a happy-go-lucky kid, but also sad at the same time. I just didn't know that everybody didn't live like that. I didn't know that some fundamental things were wrong in my upbringing. So this created a deep pain and aching inside and something not quite right. And I also had a disability I did not know about yet, ADD and attentive, which made me prone to being taken advantage of, and also made me very codependent and just very like overly trusting in situations where I shouldn't have been, and I was protecting my parents in certain situations and stuff. So this led to a lot of deep down, pain, and I felt like almost like a protector of my family. I always had a large sense of responsibility. I was an old soul. I was a wise little kid. And so I always tried to help out in all situations, and I always tried to look out for my parents. And so, but at 17, living with an alcoholic stepfather who was also abusive, I had a plan since I was 9 years old to move out when I was 17. So I did. As soon as I got my license and I got a car, I left, and I was homeless on the road. I lied to my mom because I didn't want her to worry about me, and I told her that I had a place to go, but I did not. So along those travels, I got into a party scene and I started doing drugs, and I was accepted and loved, or so I thought, into a community. And I was trying all different types of things, and I never got addicted to anything. So I thought it was good. It was the rave scene, by the way. I'm a dancer, so I was into the dance community, and I had tried so many things, and I didn't know the difference between everything. You know what I mean? People used to call weed dope back in the day, and I had already done weed. I had already done alcohol. So when people were telling me they were gonna let me try dope, I didn't I didn't know much difference between drugs, and I was so young, and I was just trying things out. But a boyfriend that I was dealing with did get me into dope. So I did try that from a Friday to a Sunday over like a weekend of partying, and I did not know that there was an addiction consequence to that, but I soon learned because I came down right after that weekend. Monday, when I went home to my parents' house, I got sick. And I thought I was just regular sick, but soon to find out, because there was nobody had cell phones. People weren't on the internet. This was the 90s. This was the mid to late 90s. It was either 97, 98, or 99, somewhere around there. So I didn't know what was going on. I was very naive. I was on my own. I did not have any guidance, and I got addicted to opiates. And I was trying to survive as a homeless teenager in Middlesex County, and a lot of contacts that I had and where I had to go pick up drugs and everything were in North Jersey and Elizabeth and Newark, New Jersey. And I got into that very hard life of just struggling to survive on the streets, and I got addicted, and it got to the point so bad I was very suicidal, and I was doing things that did not coincide with my spiritual beliefs, and I felt very shameful and upset inside. I had a lot of guilt. I did not have self-love. I did not know how to deal with my past. And I was just self-medicating because I had a disability I didn't know about and nobody would help me. And I was self-medicating to feel better. And it really was a hell on earth that I was living at that time. And I had been to so many rehabs and detoxes, and I came out and I was a size 0. And I'm a big boned lady. I'm like 5'7", big Irish woman. Like, I am thick. I've always been thick. And I was a size 0. And I looked like a skeleton. And it was very sad. And I just knew I was gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, I was running out of energy, and I just knew it wasn't gonna go good. And so I asked my mother to help me, because in the drug area where I was picking up, there was a big sign that said, 4-hour detoxification procedure, kick while you sleep. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I could do that, you know? And so my mom was very worried about me, and I gave her the number and I told her about it. And she came up with the money from my grandmother, and they called and we went to a consultation. And I basically told my mom that this was my last chance, because I wasn't willing to go into another detox, which was typically 30 to 45 days. And it was very intensive. And back then, the drugs that they had back then, like I would walk out of there 45 days later, like with legs wobbling. Like that's how weak I was from what my body had to go through. And I just knew I couldn't go through one more of that. Like I knew I was at the end of my rope. I didn't have it in me. And so I was trying to find an easier route. I was trying to find an easy way out. And when I saw the billboard, that's what it appealed to me. It appealed to my easy way out, or so I thought. But it ended up being the hardest thing I've ever done in my life on this earth. There will never be anything on this earth harder than what I went through in that experience.
So I understand that when you entered this detox outpatient facility is where some sort of accidental procedure occurred that triggered the near-death experience. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Okay, so everything went as normal. We had to sign a waiver in the beginning, and my mom wasn't too happy about this because she had to sign that it was okay if I was killed in the process, that she could not sue them. And she didn't want to do that. And I kind of pushed her forward because I knew that I was about to die anyway if we didn't do something. So I prodded her to sign the papers, and she signed it reluctantly. And I had a friend who did it right before me, a man that I was in Narcotics Anonymous, and everything went fine with him. So I went, you know, and so they put me under, and, you know, obviously I don't know what happened, but my mom tells me from there, she said the 4 hours went by. They told her that I would be done in 4 hours. And like, you know, time kept ticking past the 4 hours. So around 6 hours, she started making a fuss, like, what's going on? And then the doctors were periodically coming out and telling her there were complications, and they couldn't really figure it out. And I guess it got to a point where they were concerned that they might lose me. So they told my mom to kind of come in and say her last piece. They did not know what was wrong, and they did not know how to fix it. So they called her in, and she was actually praying in my ear and talking in my ear. And at that time, that is when, I guess, you know, to me, it seemed like I was there for a very long time. It seemed like I was there for months. That's what it seemed like to me. Although it was just a certain amount of hours on Earth, it was not there. It was months. And I was trapped in this place, and it was liquid fire, and everyone was burning, and everyone was not in a humanoid form. Everyone was in spirit form, but everyone had a face. It was black holes, eyes and mouth. I don't remember nose, but I remember like it being really hard to breathe, like you wanting to breathe, but you can't breathe. I remember everyone was like in sheer utter agony, like screaming, writhing, flying around, because we were in like a spirit body. It had the face, but then it had like a trail. It wasn't a real body. But anytime you came close to another spirit, you could feel exactly what they were going through. And what everyone was going through was like their worst pain on earth, like magnified by, I can't even say how much, like more than anyone on earth could handle, like way past that. Like it was just unimaginable pain and suffering. Like you just can't imagine, but you could feel the person's pain and the different types of suffering they were going through. And everyone was just flying around so quick trying to find a way out, and there was no way out. And it was like we were breathing fire. There was no up or down, there was no east or west. It was just liquid fire, the whole place. And all these suffering souls, like that's all it was. And there was nothing else to see. There was no boss, there were no other entities. It was just all us poor souls suffering. And it was horrible. It was so traumatizing. And I don't even know what my plan was. Like I said, you couldn't even think of anything for a second other than getting out. And, you know, it was weird because there was some kind of divine intervention, because my mother was at my body that was completely unconscious, and she was praying in my ear, and she had just started going to a new evangelical church. And she was praying in my ear, and I didn't hear anything she said except call on Jesus, baby. She said, call on Jesus, baby. And for whatever reason, I don't know who dispatched that through or who's trying to help me, obviously, probably Jesus. And it came through, and it's like a light bulb went off. You know, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh yeah, Jesus. And so in that place, I just screamed, Jesus. I screamed it out as loud as I could as soon as I remembered it. And as soon as I did that, I came back on the operating table, and I was so scared and traumatized. I was ripping everything out of me. I was ripping all the tubes. I ripped my trach out. I ripped the tubes out. They had like 4 people come and hold me down. Blood was squirting everywhere. Like I was super traumatized. And shortly after that, then I became like a vegetable. I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't go to the bathroom. My mom had to change my diapers. The only and as soon as I was that lasted for a couple weeks. And as soon as I started coming out of it, I wanted to draw pictures. I couldn't really talk yet, but I could draw a little bit and write some words, and I wanted to express to everyone around me what I had seen and what it was like. And I just remember that there was a strange color, like nothing you would ever see on this earth. It was almost the closest thing I would say is like a bronze, but it was like a sickening, like it gave you like a sickening feeling, like disgusting, sickening. And the vibe of the place was that there was nothing good at all. There was no good there. There was no connection to source. There was no connection to God. It was all pain and suffering at the lowest vibrational frequency you will ever experience. There was nothing good there at all, nothing but suffering and pain. And it was so sad and sick. And I have made a promise to God when I was as conscious as I could be. I was in my grandma's house, and she had little God posters up all around and little statues and stuff. And that was when I was kind of coming to consciousness and coming back to myself. And I was almost making deals with God, like, God, if you know, like, if I am going to be a vegetable for the rest of my life, like, I'm fine with that. Like, you got me out of that place that was so horrendous, and like, you saved me from that life of torture, because I thought I was going to be there forever. So I made a promise to Source God at that time that I was going to spend the rest of my life telling people about it so they could avoid it, you know, and that it was real. I have a different understanding of it now than I do then. But I thought at that time that my job was to like push the Christian faith and get people saved. And so I sort of went on a crusade after that. And I even went to Bible college to become a pastor. I started going for a bachelor's in professional Christian leadership at Southwestern Christian University. I've talked at women's breakfast. I've led Sozo ministry, first, second, and third chair. I was a church van driver for many years. I just worked very hard on paying my penance back to society and becoming a better person. And And that led also to more understanding, and I ended up changing my faith and learning more about myself and learning why I had those special powers as a young child. And so that's my after spiritual. That's what I'm working on now. And I came to believe that I am a starseed. I'm a Blu-ray starseed, and I'm a light worker. And
Yeah.
Jesus is my brother in Christ consciousness.
So it sounds like a lot has occurred in your post near-death experience, but I want to go back to the actual experience for a second here.
Okay.
So you're in this hellish, horrifying place. You say there's nothing but fire. There's no way to take a clear breath of fresh air because you're inhaling what appears to be or feels like fire. You're looking at other entities and they're in their spiritual form, but they're agonizing. At any given point in time, was there any communication given to you in this particular realm?
The only thing I remember is that I thought there were people that I could see, but I couldn't get to, and they were not burning, and I was asking them for help, but they couldn't help me.
So there was no communication. A lot of near-death experiencers talk about telepathic communication, some audible, some have no communication at all. That's what this sounded like here.
Yeah, there was no higher entity trying to tell me anything, no, unfortunately, and there was nothing good. Nothing good about it.
After you got up out of this state that you were in, did you ever verify with these medical professionals what happened to you from a medical standpoint?
The medical professionals seem to be covering their own butts, so to speak. That guy, Lance Guberman, ended up, I think, getting disbarred and losing his license. There's lots of articles and medical publications about what he did. We did not report ours. I'm not sure why. I was very young. I was only like 18, and like I said, I kind of lived a gypsy life since I was 17. So I was sort of depending, if somebody was going to do something like that, it would have been my parents, but they did not do anything about it. And I just kind of went back to my gypsy life. So I probably could have got a huge lawsuit. They just had the usual thing that the doctors say that in this you sign the papers, and this percentage of people, it doesn't, each person is different. It could not go according to plan. They had no explanation. They had zero explanation as to why it went that way.
And it's interesting you say that because the Los Angeles Times actually covered this story, and it was discovered that 7 people had died attempting this particular procedure, which the lawyers for those individuals stated that one of the reasons why this could have easily happened is because it wasn't in an inpatient facility like a hospital with specific equipment and trained personnel. So, yeah, there was a paper you signed, perhaps, and I do understand that this particular procedure has been done by other professionals. So, it's just interesting to note that people did die. So the chance that you did die on this table, temporarily, seems to be a real, possibility here.
Yes. Definitely is. They were sending my mom in to say her goodbyes.
So talk to us now. Well, before I get into that, I just want to let everybody know that research has been done on distressing near-death experiences. In particular, there's a near-death experiencer and researcher by the name of Nancy Evans Bush, who collaborated with Dr. Bruce Grayson, who's known as the father of near-death experience research. And they've discovered 3 types of distressing near-death experiences. One of them is called the inverse, which is just a misinterpretation of the experience because the person doesn't have any control over what's happening. The second type is someone who's in a void and has absolutely no one else to talk to, no one around them. And so they think that they're in some eternal solitude. And then the third type of near-death experience is what I would say you experience, which is the absolutely horrifying and hellish experience where there's either demonic entities, grotesque, monstrous looking entities. Some experience fire, some experience being attacked. So you certainly seem to fall into the category of the third type of near-death experience, which they also say is a rare one. So if I were to ask you, though, why do you believe this particular near-death experience happened to you, what would be your explanation? Because many people have tried to figure out why certain people have certain near-death experiences versus others.
Right. I think, and it's funny because my spirituality afterwards has led me to talking. Well, I'm psychic. And so that has led me to go to a lot of different psychics. And I also went to school to be a psychic. And so when different psychics were all telling me the same story about myself, I started believing because they're all unrelated, and so they're telling me that I incarnated to help, which I already felt that deep down in my soul ever since I was little. I always wanted to do the right thing. I always wanted to follow rules. I always wanted to protect people. I always wanted to choose the right thing. So I feel like I feel that I incarnated like Jesus. Incarnate means your spirit, came into a body in a certain place. And I feel like my job is like him, to ascend and go to higher frequencies and then eventually ascend off the planet and maybe go home to home planet, which some people would call heaven, or some starseeds call other planets. So I do believe I am here on a mission. And when I started getting, ever since I was little, there were what people call prophecies spoken over me, ever since I was little. So I knew that I was supposed to do something special spiritually and many things. I just wasn't sure exactly what. So I don't know. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just asking, why do you believe you had this particular type of near-death experience? There have been many theories. Some people say it was probably to get me on track, to turn my life around. I was living a certain way. Other people believe that quite possibly they had to learn something. There's a such thing as hybrid near-death experiences where you go from a distressing to a heavenly one. And some people just feel that they were called to experience both. Some people just don't know why they had a certain experience, whether it be a heavenly one or a hellish one. So I was just interested in your take on why you believe you had this particular one.
Okay. I believe I was on a mission, and I believe they didn't want to lose me. I believe I was about to be lost, and that this particular incarnation would be for nothing because I wouldn't have been able to have my kids. I have 5 children and a grandchild, and I am also the black sheep of the family. I'm the Rh negative black sheep. I have the special blood type, and I have become conscious of many things in the family patterns that need to stop. And I believe I could save thousands of people in the future just by making these changes in my life and passing it down to my children. And not only just our family, but many other families, everybody that we touch along the way. And so at that point, I had no kids, but I believe that that is my mission.
Correct. Another fascinating thing that you mentioned in your near-death experience is that you called out. In this particular case, you called out for Jesus. There have been near-death experiencers who had distressing near-death experiences where they too have called out to either God or some sort of force that they believe was a higher power, and they too were brought out of this hellish near-death experience. A good example of that was a gentleman by the name of Howard Storm, who had
Yep.
a hybrid near-death experience after he called out for help. Many near-death experiencers now describe coming back from their near-death experience with some sort of precognition, higher empathy levels. They may be sensitive to light. They may be able to potentially read other people's minds. Although it sounds like you already said you had these gifts prior to your near-death experience. Do you notice anything different after you've returned?
Yes. I did struggle still for some years. It's not been easy, but after maturing and growing, and because I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder and depression and things of that nature, I had to get over. I had to learn about narcissistic abuse, and I had to separate myself. And then when I was finally away from all those negative energies, I was able to believe in myself, believe in my intuition. I was able to meditate and find peace, and then receive downloads from the astral, aka heaven, or whatever anybody else wants to call it. So during those downloads and that time of healing and stuff like that, I have received stronger and more abilities, powers, intuitions, whatever you want to call it. And I do use them to manifest and help people. I've kind of always lived a life of service, but I just struggled living within myself. But now I have peace within myself, and I still just kind of live a life of service, using my abilities wherever I go to help myself and my kids foremost, and then also whoever comes across my path. It just sort of naturally comes. So I do have death premonitions. If somebody's going to die soon, that's a tough one. I do have that. It's very hard to do anything about it, because what do you tell somebody? Like, what do you say to the person or the family? You know what I mean? Like, you might possibly die soon. Like, I don't know how to tell that to somebody. So I do have those. I do psychic readings, not professionally yet. I am working on that. I just don't feel ready yet. I'm in like a hermit phase right now. I do have lots of superpowers. I can read people's minds, but I choose not to a lot, because I went into depression, because a lot of life is hard, and in this earth in 3D, it's very hard. And a lot of people don't think good things, and I don't even think that's necessarily them. I think we all deal with those thoughts, and I just found it better for my peace, just not. And I also feel it's almost like an imposition. If there's no if somebody doesn't give me permission, I probably shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean? And I like to be respectful of other entities and stuff like that. I have done some things where I've tried to locate bodies, but I also felt that that was a very touchy area, although I can do that. The families are in a state of terror and confusion, and they almost kind of take it out on you. I feel like I need to be like taught more by my mentor, my teacher, Dr. Lauren Cielo of Golden Rose Psychic Services. And I have been going to class there. I do have these abilities, but I have to learn how to protect myself, how to have protection tools, how to ground, how to meditate. I'm in training. I just need a little bit more training, and then I'll get back out there,
Very fascinating. You talk about having the premonition when someone is about to die. I did interview someone a while back who said almost verbatim what you just said after her near-death experience. So
wow.
So with that said, let me ask you, religiously speaking, are you still an evangelical Christian?
No, I'm a starseed, a light worker, and I'm ascending in my consciousness. So I'm what people call woke. What everybody calls now woke.
So
So that's
after your near-death experience, you've pretty much diminished the idea of what you've been taught as a child, religiously speaking.
I first went to the top of that. Like my goal was to be a pastor and have my own church. I was involved in various ministries. I was in a life of service all the way till I was probably 41. And I was in Bible college and learning about the Old Testament. And it's funny because they tell you things in Bible college that they don't tell you in church. And so when I started learning about the Old Testament, I was like, hold on a minute, because I'm a very logically thinking person. I like progressive thinking. I'm kind of smart. I can understand things. So some things were just not adding up, and I think I feel like Earth is a school and everyone has their lessons. And just because I did Christianity for the first 41 years doesn't mean somebody else does Christianity from 41 till they die years. Everyone can do their lessons in different time. So I don't judge my brothers and sisters. We're all as one. We're all together. We could all be learning different lessons at different times. My path was Christianity first. And then right now I'm learning about my galactic, origins. And I just, feel a little bit differently about, what goes on after you die and stuff like that. So, but I don't judge anyone. And I think there's good in all spiritual paths. And I'm open to taking all the good things and truth from all spiritual paths. And I have Archangel Michael as my healing master. I can talk to him whenever I want. I can see him in his spiritual form. I can see myself in my spiritual form. I can see many entities. I used to see only the demons when I was a kid, and I didn't quite know what to do about it, and nobody knew how to help me. But I know part of my path is probably going to make a children's book for little spiritual children that don't know what's going on from all different denominations and spiritual backgrounds. I want to make a children's book to help little kids understand not to be scared, that you're in charge, that we are in body on this earth and we don't have to be afraid of any beings without bodies. I want to make it real simple for them, and I probably have there's so many things that I want to do because I get downloads all the time from God, from source, inventions, plans, books, all kinds of things. Like there's just so many things I want to do. But also I have a large family. I have 5 kids and a grandchild. So that takes up most of my time. But I'm slowly working on all the things that I want to do to help improve the earth. And that's just my intention, just to make everything better for all the people around me and everybody I come across, and just be a help and like a source of love to everybody.
Well, you certainly sound like you have a game plan going there after your near-death experience. And I just want to end on the note that many people who come back from near-death experiences typically either gain more faith in the prior religion they were already in, or as yourself, they may step away from it and change and become more spiritual, as many of them state.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
Well, with that said, Mani, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with us your absolutely fascinating account.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mani Menendez.